Hello again, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about some Pythagorean identities. So the first Pythagorean identity is written up on the screen here, but I'm not a fan of memorization, so where does this stuff even come from? And it all goes back to the Pythagorean theorem. Makes sense based off the name, right? So if I draw my reference triangle in the first quadrant here, and this is my angle x here, my reference angle. In order to get to this point to begin with, remember we had to look at the relationship between the cosine and the sine. So if this side length here represents the cosine of an angle, and the side over here represents the sine of an angle, and remember we're talking about a unit circle, so the radius is always equal to 1. If we just use our Pythagorean theorem would be each of the legs squared is equal to the hypotenuse squared, which 1 squared is just 1. So that's where our Pythagorean identity, the most basic one, comes from. From there, we have two other different versions of it, and they're just derivatives of the original one. So I'll show you where they come from so you have all three that you can copy down into your notes. So first one, what happens if I take my original Pythagorean identity here, and let's just say we divide everything by cosine. So I'm going to divide everything here by cosine squared x. Well, sine divided by cosine is equal to our tangent. So sine squared x divided by cosine squared x will be tangent squared x. Cosine squared x divided by cosine squared x, anything divided by itself, is just equal to 1. And 1 over cosine squared x, well, that's just really asking you for the reciprocal of cosine, which we went over those rules, and so the reciprocal of cosine is going to be secant. So 1 over cosine squared theta is going to be secant squared x. That's our second Pythagorean identity. So we're highlighting them here, so we have them. This is our first Pythagorean identity. This one here is our second Pythagorean identity. And now if we go back to our original, so I'll just rewrite it here. So if I rewrite my original, sine squared x plus cosine squared x equals 1. Well, the first time we divided by the cosine. This time let's just divide by sine. We'll do the other one. So if I divide every one of my terms here by sine squared x, all right, well, again, sine squared x divided by sine squared x is just going to be equal to 1. Cosine divided by sine, this is now going to be our cotangent ratio. So cosine squared x divided by sine squared x is going to be cotangent squared x. And then 1 over sine squared x is again just asking you for the reciprocal of sine, which is going to be our cosecant. So 1 over sine squared x is going to be cosecant squared x. So let's highlight that one. So we have them all. But we have 3 different Pythagorean identities, and I showed you all where they come from. So I'm not a huge fan of memorizing stuff. If you have a really good memory, go for it. Memorize them all. Otherwise, you at least need to memorize the first one, which is fairly easy, and then just know how the other ones are derived. All right. Thank you so much for watching.